Hey folks, let's start with what sparked this conversation I'm about to have. There's a viral clip circulating online that shows a woman at a checkout using the EBT card when certain items are reportedly blocked. In that moment, she is frustrated, embarrassed, and trying to adjust her cart in front of other shoppers while taking care of a child. The items in question are things like soda, chips, candy, and processed snacks, while healthier items like vegetables are still allowed. Now, whether every detail of that specific video is exactly how policy is being enforced everywhere is still being debated online. But what is the very real is the larger policy direction being discussed across multiple states, restricting what can be purchased with SNAP benefits in the name of nutrition reform. And that is where this stops being just about one checkout line and becomes something much bigger. Hi folks, I am Peter Boykin, and this is Go Right with Peter Boykin. I am your constitutionalist for liberty. And this is my perspective. You can visit gorightnews.com for articles. I'm also on Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, and all over Facebook and X and everywhere else I can remember to go to. So, now what is actually being restricted right now? And my question is food stamps, freedom, and the line of help and control. And are we punishing the poor, really? So, what is actually being restricted right now? So, at the federal level, SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, used to be called food stamps, people, does not broadly allow states to ban entire categories of food on their own. However, states can apply for USDA waivers for pilot programs, and they can restrict certain items under limited experimental frameworks. Historically, these waivers have been difficult to get approval at a scale. But right now, in most of the country, SNAP can be used for almost all grocery foods. Alcohol, tobacco, and hot prepared meals are already excluded federally, even though they did allow hot food during COVID. And sometimes they do during bad things. I really don't see a problem with it. I think that the fact if you're poor, you might not actually be able to heat up your food. And so hot food, when it comes to grocery food, maybe in certain classifications, should be okay. I mean, I see the same stuff that was cooked hot and then made cold, and then you can buy it, and then you have to go home and microwave it. It's just not the same. But there is no nationwide ban on soda, candy, chips, or processed foods. We'll get that clear. But what is changing is the political push. Now, what states are talking about restrictions? There's a handful of states that have either requested waivers, introduced legislation, or publicly debated SNAP food restriction concepts. Now, these include Arkansas, which has historically pushed for restrictions and waiver concepts, including soda restriction discussions. Indiana, policy proposals tied to nutrition standards. Iowa, nutrition incentive and restriction debates. Nebraska, periodic legislative proposals around SNAP limitations. Utah, nutrition-focused benefit reform discussions. West Virginia, ongoing public health framing around SNAP purchases. Kansas, periodic proposals and legislative cycles. And what we're talking about in that viral clip is this just got implemented in Florida as well. Now, some of these are not active programs, but they reflect a growing trend. States testing whether SNAP can be used not just as food assistance, but as dietary control policy. Now, I'm in North Carolina, so some people ask, what about North Carolina? Because I wanted to know about that. Now, North Carolina is not currently implementing SNAP junk food bans or restrictive waiver programs at scale. However, like many states, it has ongoing public health discussions around obesity and nutrition. has interest in incentive-based programs rather than bans, which I'm okay with incentive-based programs, and it's a politically divided environment where future proposals could emerge depending on federal approval pathways. Now, the key reality for North Carolina is this. Without USDA waiver approval, sweeping restrictions are very unlikely to be forcible. So right now, NC is more of an observation and policy debate stage, not the enforcement stage, which I think is good. Now let's talk about the bigger Republican dilemma here. Now this is where the conversation gets uncomfortable inside conservative politics. There's a growing instinct in parts of the Republican base to say, quote, if it's taxpayer funded, it should only buy healthy food. Now, on the surface, this sounds disciplined, responsible, even logical, but it runs into a deeper contradiction. Because at the same time, Republicans consistently say, faith matters, family matters, personal liberty matters, and the government should not outreach into personal life. So the question then becomes, are we building a system of assistance, or are we building a system of behavioral control? Because SNAP recipients are not one uniform group. Some are what people imagine when they think of welfare abuse. Yes, that happens. But many are single parents working multiple jobs. Disabled individuals like my father. Elderly people on fixed incomes like my father. Veterans relying on assistance when benefits fall short, like my father, and families in temporary crisis. And this is where political rhetoric often breaks from reality. The uncomfortable truth about taxpayer money arguments. There's a very common talking point saying, I don't want my taxpayer dollars paying for junk food. We've said that. Like, not my taxpayer dollars. But that framing often ignores something important. First, SNAP benefits are already limited. Actually, kind of really limited. That's what's sad. Controlled and heavily regulated. There's nothing wrong with that. And people are not buying luxury lifestyles. They're buying groceries to survive. Now, second, the idea that all recipients are irresponsible ignores the reality of poverty in America, which is often about wages, disability, inflation, caregiving burdens, lack of access, and it's not about laziness. And third, there's a moral question here that cannot be policy washed away. As a nation that often claims Christian values and family values, at what point does accountability become punishment for poverty? I'm going to tell you my personal angle on this. This is not abstract for a lot of people. For my example, in my own life, I have seen what assistance actually means when it's used responsibly. My father, who's retired and a very disabled veteran, bedridden, he depends on Social Security and assistance programs just to be able to survive. Without those support, he would not be able to maintain his basic independence, even though that's very limited because I have to help him. And believe me, I have my own household stuff, so I need that dependence that he gets to help me as well, to not put me in the poorhouse as well. And even with that, it is not excess. It is not comfort. It is survival level support. And when people talk about restricting food choices, it hits differently when you understand that limited benefits actually look like in real life. Now, the policy question nobody's answering well is, if the goal is health, then banning soda is not a complete solution. I mean, folks, a lot of these things that people buy, they're cheaper to buy. That's why they buy them. When they're trying to spread out food stamps, like my dad gets like $105. I try to get things that he can have. I know a lot of times they've had restrictions on, they want to restrict fruit juice. Like, you can't buy the Minute Maid fruit juice. You got to get 100% fruit juice. Well, that's more expensive. And when your benefits are not as much, yeah, you tend to go for the cheaper things. Maybe so much less healthy, but you tend to go for the cheaper things. So I would say the only way that they could do that is possibly a benefit. Like if you buy healthy items, you get twice the benefit. Or if you do unhealthy items, it's, dollar per dollar. But the policy question nobody's answering is, because the real issue is food deserts exist. That's where you don't really have a place to go buy groceries, especially healthy groceries. Healthy food access is uneven. Transportation is limited by many recipients. Some people use Uber and DoorDash and Instacart to get groceries. Budget constraints already shape choices before policy ever does. And if the goal is accountability, then we also have to be honest about something else. We do not apply this kind of restriction thinking to every form of government spending. So why is food assistance the place where moral discipline becomes policy enforcement? We don't think about this when we're dropping bombs, but why do we care so much when, people are like, not my money for them bombs. We got to protect America. We got to protect other countries and stuff. But the minute we are talking about actual American citizens, then people are like, no, they should have to pay that loan back. They shouldn't be taking unemployment. They should feel embarrassed for this. Why are we neglecting our own citizens? As Christians, we shouldn't. We should love our neighbor, help our neighbor, help our neighbor help themselves. Understand that people are in places where they need help. So we need a better approach than restrictions alone. If lawmakers actually want better outcomes, there are more balanced options, like incentives for healthy purchases instead of bans. Dollar for dollar or even doubled SNAP value for fruits and vegetables. Expanding grocery access in underserved areas. Underserved areas. Nutrition education that is practical, not punitive. And job pathways and wage support for fewer families, so fewer families are needed assistance long term. And that approach respects both physical responsibility and human dignity. So I'm going to leave you with some closing thoughts. At this core of the entire debate is a simple tension. Do we believe assistance should help people stabilize their lives and move forward, or shape their personal behavior through restriction? Because those are not the same thing. And if we are not careful, the line between helping people eat better and deciding what poor people are allowed to buy gets crossed very quickly. And once government starts deciding not just that people need help, but how they are allowed to live while receiving it, we should all pay attention to that direction. Because the question ultimately is not just about SNAP. It's about what kind of country we want to be in when someone is struggling and needs a hand, not a lecture at the checkout line. Folks, this is Peter Boykin, and this is Go Right with Peter Boykin. I am your constitutionalist for liberty, and this is my perspective. You can check out the websites, gorightnews.com, peterboykin.com, gorightnc, and .com, and gorightmusic.com. I'm putting out music every single day. It's going up on Spotify and all the other music platforms. God bless everybody, and peace.